All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of Diary of a Sales Engineer. I'm Ryan Kruger.
And I'm Samir Kasser, and today we're going to talk about how to train your AE. We might giggle a little bit, but I think it's really important that you develop a very strong relationship, a strong bond with your account executive, your sales counterpart. And that's what today's episode is going to be all about. How do we talk with them? How do we build our rapport? How do we have those uncomfortable conversations when it comes to disagreements we might have on where the deal is at, how to move forwards? We've talked a lot about rapport building, and why don't we just start there, Ryan? What are some things that you've done in the past that have helped you build that relationship into a positive relationship with your account exec?
You know what, Samir? Like, this is so crazy because I wasn't even thinking about it today. But what I've been doing, because we've had some newer reps start at the company, is what I like to do, especially as I'm starting a new relationship with an AE. So, a call that I actually had today was a virtual cup of coffee with one of our newer AEs, and it is just time to get to know each other. There is nothing else. I don't want to talk about work. I just want to know things like, what are your personal interests? What do you do outside of work? So that way, when I'm on a call, if something comes up, I maybe know I can joke about it or say that this is something that you really like to do. And it makes it feel like this really cohesive relationship, almost as if it's two friends just, selling a product together. And I don't get to that level unless I get to know you personally. Also, by getting to know you personally, I might know more about your personality traits. Where a question gets asked, I might just know that that's something that you're going to want to respond to versus something that I should take the lead on and respond to. And so by doing those little things, it helps establish this kind of relationship where you're not just working together, you're starting to actually sell together. And it is always of my personal belief that when AEs and SEs are working together very cohesively on a call, you're going to have a lot more outcomes that are in the positive direction because you're not going to have these times on a call where it's just like weird, awkward silence or two people that are constantly, what? No, that won't happen anymore because you'll just know. Oh, you know what? They're going to respond to that. It's okay. I'll take 2 seconds here. One, two, they're already answering. Another question gets answered. They might go one, two. Ryan's already going to answer. So it ends up becoming this really comfortable space that prospects come into, even virtually on Zoom, that feels very authentic. And so by creating that level of authenticity on the call, it just provides a good space for, potential clients to actually evaluate software and feel comfortable with you. And, just circling back to like the very beginning when we started this thing, I think we talked about this idea of people buy from
Mm-hmm.
people that they like.
Yep.
So are you and your rep two people that this person can imagine going out to dinner with? Can they see that? If they can see that, then you might already have a leg up on some other vendors that they've gotten on a call with and they go, yeah, I really wouldn't want to see them outside of working hours. And so like it does make this difference. But I don't know, Samir, what else have you done?
I think you make an excellent point. I love the coffee chat and not talk about anything related to work. I think that really gets you to open up about yourself too. Hey, these are my interests, these are my hobbies. Hey, maybe you guys have overlapping hobbies and something you can then share. Oh, I'm really into cars, you're really into cars. I saw this really cool video of a guy working on a car, and you send it over, and those little things come out. All of a sudden your prospect has some similar interests, and now you guys can all riff on it. And I think you make an excellent point of, hey, would I want to see this person outside of hours? I remember one of the things I was told kind of early on in my career, especially when you were interviewing, is can I, interviewer, imagine getting a beer with me? Like, I want to have that friendly, open type of personality persona just to make feel people feel comfortable. Where if we were in a non-working environment, we would still enjoy each other's company, and then that shows on calls with customers, and that people buy from people they. And I like that addition you added. People buy from people who they trust. And when you can show that you and your rep have a trust between the two, you guys are both firing on all cylinders, you're filling each other's sentences, you're able to jump in as appropriate. That shows a layer of trust that you two have developed, which then will help the prospect also be more trustworthy. And I think those in person meetings of just hanging out and not talking about work and talking about other things that are going on in life, what your interests are, that really helps build the relationship between you and your AE. to then have space for you to then have a little bit more of those harder conversations and the ones where you might not agree 100% on how to move forward. And so I've had a handful of conversations with AEs where they, might say something incorrect on the call. And after the call, having to be like, hey, slap them on the wrist a little bit, be like, we can't be saying that because that's just false and we're giving the wrong type of communication to the prospect on the call. And when they do come to actually sign the deal and we can't implement it, that's going to look bad on you, AE, because they might churn because you said that we could do XYZ feature function and that's not possible. And now they're a customer and now they're unhappy and nobody wants an unhappy customer. So like, what are times when you've had to go and actually have these conversations and overcome that uncomfort?
I'll say, like, when you've established a real relationship with a rep, it's so much easier to have a conversation around the things that are difficult to talk about, right? Maybe the AE says something that you can't really do. It makes it easy for me after the call to just say, via Slack message, hey, we actually can't do that. Just so you're aware next time, it's okay you said it today. Don't say it again. I don't even feel guilty about sending a message like that. I don't have to give a probably like a good phrase for this, but I'll call it a soft landing here where I'd have to be like, hey, great job today. But you told the prospect that we actually can do something that we can't do. But hey, is that fine? And sometimes you will have to do stuff like that throughout your professional career. There's going to be moments where you have to know how to deliver news to different people that you work with. But when you have real relationships with your AEs, you should want to foster a space where you can have real hard conversations. An example I'll give of this is there was a rep who I used to work with. And when we first started working together, it was very difficult for him and I to actually be on calls. I'm somebody that likes to talk a lot. He was somebody that likes to talk a lot. So we would do the back and forth. And so one day, him and I got on a call and we just hashed it out. We aired it out. He said, hey, you're doing these things that I don't like. And I said, hey, guess what? You're doing these things that I don't like. And so then the next calls that took place after that, there was still time figuring it out, but we kept getting on calls like that and talking it through. And by doing that, next thing you know, we were on these calls and it was like clockwork. I could hear a phrase or a question or the tone of a prospect's voice, and I would know that he would want to respond. I wouldn't even think about getting off of mute or coming on to say something. I would just sit back. I would know that he would want to get into the call. And then it just created this awesome environment. And so like it did take time. And just like in real life, right? Every relationship you have is different. So every relationship you're going to have with your reps are different. Meaning there's going to be things that this rep wants to say versus another rep. There's going to be a spot where this rep wants to jump in, whereas another rep just wants to sit back. You got to figure out what your rep likes to do. Otherwise, you'll have these awkward moments. So I do encourage, like, one-on-one feedback is amazing. Ask your reps. If you are a good sales engineer looking to become a great sales engineer or an excellent sales engineer, you can start by telling your reps, I want feedback on these calls. And don't give me cookie cutter feedback that just says, hey, awesome, excellent demo today. Tell me if I had filler words. Tell me if I messed up somewhere. Tell if I responded to something that you wanted to respond to. That's where you're not just being a base level SE anymore. You are upskilling and learning how to interact with all the different types of sellers that you're going to interact with in your entire career. And you're going to be able to work with whoever, whenever, and wherever. So have those conversations, even if it's weird. I remember like the first few times him and I got on these calls, like it was awkward. It was so awkward being like, yeah, I actually really don't like when you say this particular thing. I don't like when you actually respond to that question. Like that is a weird conversation to have. But it also told me that he was somebody I could trust because I knew he was going to tell me the way it is versus sort of beat around the bush and give me these soft landings. Ryan, excellent, awesome demo today. But this one time, this guy said something and I really wanted to answer and you did, which was fine, but I would have preferred it. And when we talk like that, it's just not direct. So then the next call I get on, I just respond to it anyways because I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then they get upset. And now we have this relationship where it's just like these two things don't fit together anymore. And so have those real conversations.
You touch on a lot there. Some of the things I want to pick out is one, having hard conversations builds trust because I feel like when you can have uncomfortable conversations and then come out the other side fine. I'm not going to say unscathed because, we all get our feelings hurt sometimes, and sometimes the harsh truth is harsh, and it's like, oh, that hurt, but he was right. I need to tighten that up. But when you come out from the other side, you build more trust. You can be like, okay, I can be brutally honest, but he's not gonna or she's not gonna take it in a negative way. It's gonna be a growth moment. And when you are an SE wanting to level up, the person you're on the calls with the most is your AE. They're the ones who is seeing you day in and day out, giving almost the same demo over and over, especially on these earlier calls. And they're the ones who are going to be able to see your growth, see how you are changing. And so being able to get feedback from them and also give them feedback is going to be huge. Another thing that you touched on is just having the outside conversations from the call. And you didn't explicitly say this, but it sounded like we're doing prep calls and we're doing post recap calls. And in the beginning, maybe there's more prep calls and recap calls than once you find your stride. And I think that's something that I would always want to do with my reps, and the reps were not necessarily most open to having a prep call. And so that definitely something that I struggled with and was frustrated with because sometimes 30 minutes before the call, hey, I need you to jump on a demo for this customer who I've never heard of. Hey, is there any type of discovery that you've done? No, we just got this from marketing and it just showed up. I'm sorry for the late notice. And you're then kind of trying to play catch up on the call. And if you don't have that relationship with the AE, it makes it really difficult. So those like pre-prep calls and be like, hey, this is what I need to be successful. And if I'm successful, you're successful. At the end of the day, we're both trying to close business. I mean, I want to make money. You want to make money. Like we're in sales for a reason. We want to come in. We want to give a good job, a good presentation. And here's how we do it successfully. The other thing that you touched on that I thought was super important was almost delineating roles. Like you set up different swim lanes. Hey, I really like to answer questions of this style. Hey, if it becomes too technical, like that's going to be all you because you're the SE, you understand the technical capability. So I'm going to just steer clear from it. And then even I've had conversations with my AEs where either of us are not sure who should be doing it. I will jump in and give an answer and then be like, oh, Ryan, is there anything else you would add to that type of thing? Or my AE would jump in and give an answer and then, oh, Samir, correct me if I'm wrong. Or would there be anything else that you would want to add to that? And this way, when you're in that gray zone on the call, it still looks polished because you're giving an answer and then you're opening up the floor for your teammate to also part it and jump in just in case something was missed.
Yeah, and for me too, like, something about my personality that stands out is like when I'm on these different demonstrations, I take a very proactive sales approach throughout. So as I'm doing a product demo, I am selling and I am continuing to sell. So for some A's, that might be a little bit different because they might have worked with some SEs in the past that are just, hey, I'm here to show up. I'm here to give a demonstration. I'll throw out some value props, but it is on you to sell this deal. I'm super competitive. So if I'm getting on a call and I'm spending my time, I want to win so badly. Like that is just a part of my style. So that's different for different A's. And I know that. And so I'll even ask, like, hey, what do you think about, my style? Are you okay with the style that I have? Do you need me to pull back anywhere? Or do you want me to continue, just being me and doing this, right? And there's to a certain degree, like I can pull back a little bit. I'm not going to pull back entirely. I could pull back a little bit and know like, hey, there's some different parts where you're going to want to do some selling throughout the demonstration. That's fine. I'll give you the space to do that. Just let me know. Just tell me, hey, I want to actually jump in there. Or we start going through those pre and post calls. And through those pre and post calls, it becomes apparent every time I'm hearing a question get asked, like they're always jumping in, giving a customer story or a value story. I just know at that part of my demo, pause. See like the cadence that they're coming in at. Notice where they're jumping in at always. And if you pick up on it, just give them the space to talk. I'm going to go through my flow. When I hit this part, I'm actually going to take my hand off the mouse so I don't have crazy mouse syndrome. I'm going to take a sip of water, So that way I can just catch my breath. I've already been talking for a while. AE jumps right in with the point that I already know that they want to say. Like these are like the small little things as a sales engineer that we can be doing throughout. It's just picking up on these small little nuances. And like today's title is how to train your AE. It's not how to tame your AE. It is how to train your AE to work with you. And you said something that really stood out to me. And you have to be able to have hard conversations with AEs, especially as they first get started. Otherwise, bad behaviors and bad habits begin. If you don't start telling your rep, hey, this is what I expect from you going into a call, they're just going to keep producing bad discovery notes. Or they're going to open up and tell you 30 minutes before you have a call, here's the notes that I have. Well, it's 30 minutes and I'm on back to back. I don't have time to go through these notes. I can't possibly read through them 30 minutes prior to the call. But if you don't say something, those habits will continue to happen. So you have to speak up. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a position of always getting those notes 5 minutes prior. 5 minutes prior, it'll be 3 bullet points. You're like, I have nothing that I need. We're never selling on these demos. It's always a disco demo, or it's just an out of the box demonstration. It's not a value demonstration. So to me, like those things really stand out as a part of why it's so important to have this awesome relationship with your AE. Because if you don't, you're not really going to sell a lot.
I couldn't agree more with what all you just said. I honestly think that when you give them a little bit of the why behind some of these asks, sometimes like an AE might not fully understand, hey, why is it important for us to know the cloud provider? Some arbitrary technical nuance that matters to us because it's going to dictate how and what we show within the product. But to them, it just seems nebulous. So giving them an understanding of, hey, I need this piece of information so that when we get to this part of the demo, I can hit on features A, B, and C instead of D, E, and F. And when you give them a little bit more of the context of the why, now they can think about, oh, I need to ask this. So down the line, it's just going to be way more polished. And ultimately, it's going to lead to me closing more deals. And ultimately, it's going to lead to me hitting my quota. And ultimately, potentially exceeding my quota. And at the end of the day, I'm going to get a bigger check if I am able to get these discovery questions that Samir is asking for. He asks for them every single deal, and it's only going to benefit me. So if you can position those asks in a way that is going to be a win for the AE, which should be fairly simple to do, because if you can close the deal faster, that's going to close the same. You guys have the same goals. So just reminding each other that you have the same goals, you want to improve each other, also makes a big difference in helping them understand where you're coming from.
What you're describing to me is like when we don't get the arbitrary piece of information that we need, it leads to what I have coined a quote unquote cool demonstration. And maybe I should make a post on this on LinkedIn, because I've really liked this phrase that I've started to use. So I call it a cool demonstration. The reason for that is if we don't have good enough information up front, we are just there to demo the out-of-the-box functionality, meaning we don't actually relate it back to the business pains that are happening for the person evaluating. And so their takeaway at the end of an hour, 2 hour, however long your demos are, they walk away and the most they can say is, cool demo.
Yep.
That's all they can say, because you haven't related it to the pains and challenges that they have. So you have to have the information up front. Because then when you're in the demonstration, you get to showcase the product functionality and relate it back to the actual pain that's felt. It takes you how long to do this? Guess how long it's going to take you to do now? What would that mean to your business if you got this much time back? Well, you know what, Ryan? That would be amazing. So it goes from being a cool demonstration to a value demonstration very quickly when we get that information. If we don't, you are just, as what I would call a demo monkey, you are just going to go and do the out-of-the-box demonstration, repeat the same talk tracks that you could do in your sleep, and the prospect walks away every time and they say, cool demo. What happens after a cool demo? Nothing. The next time that some prospects will actually book a call with you. So they'll tell the rep, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. I'll meet again with you guys in 3 weeks. You know what happens more often than not after a cool demo? Prospect doesn't show up to that meeting. Happens all the time.
And they keep pushing it and pushing it, don't give a reason. I think, yeah, that's the worst piece of like response back. Oh, that was a cool software. Oh, that's pretty nifty. Like you kind of missed the ball. It sounds nice. Don't get me wrong. When someone says, "Oh yeah, that's a cool demonstration," sounds nice, but that's not a buying signal. And like another thing is that we notice that I also want to talk to you about and figure out kind of for my own sanity as well is when there are red flags on deals, like how have you had conversations with your AEs to almost disqualify them early in order to be like, yo, like this is not going to work. We don't go in this domain. Their use case is absolutely something that is just out of our wheelhouse and it's not going to be good for the business. Like how have you approached that?
I would love to tell you that there is like a standard approach to this, that there is a one size fits all approach. There just isn't. Because there is going to be times when you have product functionality that you just can't do. Like in the case of where you just can't do it, as the technical resource involved in the project, you just have to be so blunt about it and just say, no, we can't do it. Like we really need to disqualify this deal. There is no fit unless they decide that they will take us just this, right? And I actually had a situation like that just happen. And I was just very honest. Hey, look, this just isn't going to fit for them. I don't think there's any providers out there that could do X, Y, Z, but you know what? It's probably just not someone we want to take on because it's really going to impact our implementation team. I don't see this being a customer that we could stand up successfully. We should just move on. Let's focus on the other prospects that we do have a shot at closing that could be happy customers. So in that case, I like to be very, sometimes we'll have product functionality requests that come up though. That is like, can there be a workaround solution? Or if there's a workaround solution, let's start brainstorming. How could we solve for this? In that case, I would relay information. Hey, I'm not really certain that we have something. I'm thinking through a couple of approaches. Let's actually plan time to get on with the prospect. Let's talk through the different approaches I have. Let's get feedback from them. Let's see if any of these solutions could potentially work. So based on the feedback from the prospect, we might walk away and say we need to DQ. Prospect might come back and say, you know what, that workaround solution would work really well for us. So it really depends. I wish there was like a straightforward approach to this, but I will say, if you know in your heart of hearts as an SE that it's just not going to work, please speak up. Please say something, disqualify the deal. Otherwise, you are going to have so many downstream issues where either the customer is going to sign up, they're going to churn, they're going to be upset. Maybe your manager is now looking at you like, why didn't we just DQ this deal? And if you need, get your manager involved. Sometimes that will have to take place. You should be able to have that conversation with your rep. And if you've earned their trust, they'll just move on. But you might have to talk to the head of sales or maybe the sales manager for them and let them know exactly why you're wanting to DQ a deal. That's fine. You might not have to get your manager involved for that. But if there is a time where like, sales is still wanting to push forward for something, it's not a fit, get your SE manager, director involved. Have them come on and explain why we should be disqualifying this deal and not taking it on as a potential call.
Yeah, and I think I would add that we should only be doing this if we've truly exhausted all of our ideas, our out of the box thinking, our workarounds, have gone to product and be like, hey, this is the business problem that we're trying to solve. From my research and my understanding and testing, I don't think it's possible, but do you guys know something that I might be missing from a technical perspective? Maybe you've heard this elsewhere in your experience. Like, I think really don't disqualify too quickly because that's also going to be a ding on just your trustworthiness of anytime there's some kind of problem, so you're just going to disqualify it right away. Like, no, that's not what we're trying to get at, nor is that what we want to be doing. But we do
You
want
will
to
be the most hated SC at the organization if you disqualify too many deals too early on.
Yeah.
Because they're going to say, you know what, my SC, they don't critically think through this. They don't come up with creative workaround solutions. They just give up whenever it gets tough. Like that is the quickest way to have sales just be like, you know what, I don't really want to work with him. We disqualify 9 out of 10 deals I'm on. Like that's not going to be fun for anybody involved too. So I do exercise a lot of caution around disqualify. You should really make sure this deal cannot work
and
before you just kick it to the curb.
On the flip side of that, though, if you are an SE who can get creative in figuring out workarounds or figuring out how to push the product in places maybe we didn't think was possible, now reps are going to be wanting to work with you. Be like, oh yeah, Ryan, like we had this deal, didn't seem possible, but he thought of this really creative way in order to get what the prospect and the client wanted while still working within the means of what we were able to do within the product, whether that was using just something creative of, okay, maybe we do some pre-processing before it comes into our product and now it's ready to be manipulated within our product. And coming up with those ideas really first gives you have to have a deep understanding of just what your products can and cannot do. And then what are almost like the inputs and outputs endpoints of what it can do. So now you can understand what the whole environment looks like of, okay, here's the data that they have, here's the data that they want, here's where our product can fit in, and what are auxiliary things that we might be able to leverage in order to achieve their overall end-to-end business process. And now if I am that technical resource who has helped facilitating that, now that's going to get my rep really stoked to work with me, because if we have some complicated strategic big deal, I'm going to get my hands on it because I've proven that I can think out of the box. I can think about connecting maybe some of our partners who we work with who can help us out. And so if you're the one who is able to make the like impossible possible in some type of way, that's going to be huge of getting you from that good SE to that great and exceptional SE.
Yeah, and I want to riff on a couple of things here. One, if you are coming up with these creative sort of workaround solutions, quickest way to become the most hated SC by the implementations team is not documenting any of it. So if you come up with these creative workarounds, you should be documenting it. And when you do your sales to CS or sales to implementation handoff, make sure you provide them the solution that you proposed. Otherwise, they're going to get, to implementing the customer, they're going to say, well, I'm expecting this. And implementation team is going to say, are you even talking? We don't do this particular thing. So make sure that your team's aware. So just like you become the most hated from sales, you also become most hated from implementation.
I think on that point is when you're coming up with these workarounds, talk to implementation.
Yeah.
Come up with these ideas, run it by them. Pretty much like run your ideas internally before you go to the client, whoever it's going to involve and potentially affect, whether that's talking to engineering, talking to implementation, talking to product, talking to sales. Like as an SE, we do sit in the center of the organization to a certain degree, and it is our job to, yes, get creative, but to make sure we don't know what we don't know. So getting it in front of more people is not going to harm you. It's just going to save time in the future and headache. So that's a great call out to ensure that implementation is on board with this workaround or this creative idea to make it work.
Yeah. And so you brought up a couple of points too. It's like when we're creating these, creative workaround solutions, step one is you have to have a great understanding of the product itself. But when you're crafting these sort of solutions, you have to really understand the challenge that is being faced. So a particular example I have of this was a customer I was working with. When I was talking to them, I found out that no matter what we did, when it got into their system, they still had to do this fully manual process in the background where somebody was going in and selecting this box. But because I had experience working with NetSuite, I knew that there was a script that they could run or build. And so it wasn't my solution that was going to solve for the problem. It was actually them building a solution on top of it. So I was like, hey, let us handle it. Once that information makes its way into your system, you then run a script. It gets rid of that manual piece because you're right. If I were to give you all this automation and it gets your system, you still have to run a manual process with somebody selecting each one of these. I don't know. It sounds like it's really not going to be very beneficial to you today. But imagine you could have all those things working. Well, then it'd be great. And instantly as we got into it, they're like, I never thought of it. That sounds awesome. They become a customer weeks later because it's something that is just understood the challenge. It was like my product wasn't going to solve the challenge, but I understood what they were running into. And because I had knowledge of their system, I was like, oh, what if we just went about it this way? So try to get knowledgeable on these things. Like every time you have a call with someone, it's always an opportunity to learn more about the sort of universe that you're selling into.
Uh-huh.
Take down notes, like every step of the process. And on the notes front, because I really want to hit on this, AEs that are listening, this is to you. When we are on demonstrations, please take notes.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand why when I ask for notes after an hour demonstration or a 2-hour demonstration where I'm demoing product and I'm jotting down the different requests that are coming in and I'm managing multiple screens and things that are running, that you cannot take notes for me and update everybody else as to what happened on today's call. I don't understand why that's my responsibility when for the most part during a demo, I'm doing 70 to 80% of the talking. It's one of those things that will really bother me as a sales engineer is like
Mhm.
it's a partnership. It's not a solo ship. Like I really, AEs that are listening, please take notes. If you want the best out of your SEs, you will take notes, and guess what you'll see from your SEs? You will see them building more creative solutions. You will see them be willing to jump on a last minute demonstration without any notes. You will see them be there for you when you need them. But if you don't do the little things for the SE, they are going to be the first to tell you, you know what? You asked me to hop on this last minute demo. I got back to back calls today. Just next week. It's got to be next week. I just don't have time today.
Yeah, no,
That's the
that's
sort of
huge.
responses that you get.
Huge, because sometimes I would get in that same feeling like, what were you guys doing for the last 45 minutes while I'm here demoing? Sometimes you feel like I've had times where like the AE has introduced me and then turn off the camera and go on mute. And it's like, where did you go? Are you getting like a workout in? Like what is going on? And sometimes what I've done too is not called out my AE, but been like, that's a great point, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Hey, AE, could you note that down so we can review it later? And just verbalized it on the call and be like, hey, Ryan, can you just take a note of that later? And that kind of incorporating the training part where I'm acknowledging it, then I'm also guiding the AE of, hey, this is how it's going to be beneficial for the two of us if we can note these types of things down. And I will say good AEs do this already. Like they don't need to be told. They know that they've worked with SEs long enough. They know what to be listening for. They know how to almost like look a level deeper when certain phrases are said by the prospects and understand that. And that becomes then it becomes fun too as your duo. It's like, oh, I noticed the prospect, I
Mhm.
noticed their eyes widen when you showed this part of the product, and then note that down. Like those little things. If I were to tell AEs, like, watch how the prospects are reacting to different things within the demo, especially if their camera's on. Hey, I'm highlighting this one portion. You see them leaning in closer. Take a note of that. That's going to be really big. You see
And tell
them.
me that. And
Yeah.
tell me that. Sometimes I'm on one computer. I can't have the list of 20 participants up on my screen while I'm demoing and looking at their body language. I would like to if I can. If I have multiple screens, I will. But in some cases, I'm not going to be able to. After a call, tell me, you know what? You had actually said something really insightful today. They immediately leaned in. I could see them nudge somebody else on the call. Like, if I don't have that contextual evidence, I might walk away and say, yeah, I don't know, that they were maybe feeling okay towards the product. I'm not really sure. I couldn't see them. Their tone was very just mild throughout. But if the tone was mild throughout, but you're telling me afterwards they were nudging each other in the room the entire time, going, wow, this is amazing. Like those little contextual things then help me understand how well today's call went.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just one of those things that the little things go such a long way within the dynamic duo of the partnership between AE and SE. And it's why that it's so important to get on the same page. Like you said, sometimes you'll call out A's, hey, can you take note of this? That's great for the first few calls you're on, but don't make me ask you on the 10th call we're on together.
Mm-hmm.
I already want you to take note of it. Take note of it. I don't need to ask you every time to take note of what's important on a call. Get used to what I want to hear back in those notes. Like it's one of those things that will go such a long way if you do the little things right. And the more that a sales team does all of the little things right together, the more success that you will have. You will start selling bigger opportunities. You will start selling more opportunities more often. You will take a look at things like win rate and watch win rate start to go upwards. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's important. It's the small things. I don't know. It's something that I feel so very passionate about because I have seen the relationships I've had with previous reps in my career where they were the types of individuals that got on, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this is Ryan, our SE. Camera off, end of call. Hey, so what do you want to do for next steps? You didn't talk for 59 minutes. Who are you? Who actually are you on this call?
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of stuff drives me crazy. Guess what? Those deals never get sold. The
Yep.
A's that did those things never sold deals. And one time, I will tell you, because I had worked with this AE once a previous career. So no current AEs. This is not you. There was an AE I had worked with, and I noticed the first call we got on right away, introduction, camera off, end of call. All right. Second time I got a call, I had a question. You know what, Mr. or Mrs. AE, will you please provide some insight here? Is there anything you want to add? Silence. Silence for over 5 minutes. And then when they finally get on, oh, I'm so sorry. I was just looking for the mute button. It has been 5 minutes. So where were you? So you were not really doing your job. Guess what? You're not going to be the rep that's making, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because you just don't really care to have the attention to detail. You just want somebody else to do the work for you.
Yeah.
So if you want to become, a very successful rep that is making hundreds of thousands or be a part of the, president's club, you will do the little things the right way, which is not just introduction and wrap up at the end of the call. You will be chiming in throughout the call. You'll be taking notes. You'll be relaying those notes to your SE. You'll be working cohesively with your SE, updating them every step along the way, even when your SE is not around. Hey,
Yeah.
Ryan, you know what? I actually had a great update today. I spoke to so-and-so. They actually let me know the demo went really well. The next call for us is going to be this. They would really like to see this. They're actually going to loop in someone else. That contextual sort of information is huge.
Yeah. Even monitoring the chat. If I'm giving a demo to 10, 15 people and there's questions going on in the chat, I can't do that and also give the demo and also like be paying attention. Like I need help. So if you're monitoring the chat for questions, if you can field some of them, great. If you can't, pause me, be like, hey, actually, Samir, Ryan had a question in the chat. Can we take a look and answer that before moving on with the demo? And giving me some guidance would be super helpful. And the little thing, right? Keep your camera on. If you open the call and your camera's on, don't get off camera until the call is done. You can be on mute, that's fine, but keep your camera on. That like I see that was a big pet peeve of mine. If I had a rep introduce me, be like, yeah. One thing I would always do is I'd get promoted on calls. Oh yeah, this is our senior sales engineer, and I'm just like a regular sales engineer, or this is like our principal.
Sure.
Like, I'd always get promoted, and I always think that was hilarious. But then they would go on mute and turn their camera off, and it's like now like I'm feeling alone. Like I'm gonna have some animosity towards you. So if the least you can do is keep your camera on, that's gonna be huge. And then the next least thing is take some notes, and then share with us after the fact. That way we can then strategize on, hey, oh, it looked like Megan was a little apprehensive, but like John was really into it. So maybe we like use John as our champion, and then we can start to strategize about the deal and figure out how to best approach it and move forward. So
you know what, Samir, I really want us to do this because I think this is such a great topic to be shared out there. I want you and I to put our heads together, and we should either come up with the top 5 or top 10 pet peeves that we have, because I think it'd be excellent content and it'd be so fun to do. So I want to pencil that one in. Let's draft up something either on LinkedIn, like let's put together a list here and let's share that out there. If you have pet peeves and you're listening to this call, send me a message. I want to hear the pet peeves, or when we make the post, let me see what the pet peeves are. I think that would be just like awesome content.
No, you are absolutely right. And I guess this is our way of holding ourselves accountable. We will put out something of top pet peeves from SEs about their AEs. And
the getting promoted one cracks me up. Like that cracks me up.
Yeah, dude. Biggest one. Hi, this is Samir. He's gonna run the rest of the call. Mute. Camera. It's like, where did you go?
Where are you? Yeah, where are you on this call? What are you possibly doing on this call where you're gone for 55 minutes? You're back for the last 5. Like, I always wanted to know, like, where did you go?
So if we were to wrap up today and just kind of establish what we talked about, first things first, get on a good relationship with your AE. New AE, new SE relationship, coffee call, coffee chat. I love it. No work talk. Just life talk, where you from, where you live, what do you like to do for fun, any random thing to learn them as a person. What was the next thing we talked about then, Ryan?
Let's see. I mean, I think just like overall best practices of how to work together, having tough conversations
Mm-hmm.
is a big one. Have the tough conversations, figure out the best practices for how you're going to work together and collaborate. So, what kinds of questions they want to answer, what sort of notes do you need from a discovery process, or even as a demo goes on, what do you need out of
Yep.
the call? And then lastly, like, don't commit the 10 awful sins of AES in your relationship. Like it really is like the small things will go such a long way in how this relationship plays out and how many deals that you sell together. When you're not doing the little things, your SE's not going to be willing to go the extra mile for you.
Yep.
And guess what? End of quarter, things get crazy. Schedules are crazy. So when you want that 30-minute call to validate a last second IT call, SE might just say, you know what, I just don't have the time today. And your deal pushes out another week, makes its way into the next quarter. So like these things are really, really small things that go a long way.
Yeah. Small things go a long way. The details matter.
Details and everything matters. I think with that, like next up for us is we're going to release our top 10 pet peeves or the sins of the relationship. I don't know. We'll come up with a funny title for this. And then I would say be on the lookout for the next podcast to drop. We'll continue dropping at our regular cadence where we have a couple of fun guests lined up here in the near future. So some other people will be joining us. So look forward to those episodes. Continue to collaborate. Let us know what you want to see. If had people reach out to me on LinkedIn, we'll be sure to start incorporating more of those materials as we go throughout. But really appreciate everybody listening.
Yep. And till next time, we'll talk to y'all soon.
Till next
Peace.
time.